What if I told you corruption doesn't start with greed, power, or even crime? What if it starts with something far more ordinary? A favor, a shortcut, a just this once. And by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late. We like to believe corruption begins with villains, shady politicians, greedy CEOs, criminal masterminds plotting in back rooms, because that version of the story is simple. It gives us someone to blame. But real corruption, it doesn't begin with villains. It begins with normal people, people with careers, families, reputations, people who never plan to become corrupt, because corruption doesn't start as corruption, it starts as a decision. Imagine this, you're working your job, you're doing everything right, and then one day, an opportunity appears. Not illegal, not obvious, just a little gray. Maybe it's using company resources for personal use. Maybe it's bending a rule to hit a deadline. Maybe it's overlooking something you shouldn't. And you tell yourself, it's not a big deal. No one's getting hurt. I'll fix it later. That moment, that's where corruption begins. Not with a crime, but with a compromise. Here's the dangerous part. Once you cross that line, even a little, it gets easier the next time because your brain starts to adapt. Psychologists call it a moral disengagement. You stop seeing your actions as wrong and start seeing them as necessary. That small compromise, it becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes a habit, and that habit becomes your new normal. You don't wake up one day and decide to become corrupt. You wake up and realize you already are. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. People just don't do corrupt things. They justify them. I deserve this. They would do the same to me. This is how the system works. And if I don't do it, someone else will. Sound familiar? Because these aren't the thoughts of criminals. They're the thoughts of everyday people trying to make sense of what they've done. And the more they justify it, the less it feels like corruption at all. Because corruption isn't just about individuals, it's about systems. Workplaces that reward results, no matter the cost. Organizations that look the other way, as long as profits grow. Cultures where speaking up means risking everything. In those environments, corruption doesn't just survive, it thrives. Because when enough people make small compromises, it stops being an exception and becomes the rule. At this point, there's no going back, because by then, the stakes are too high. Maybe you've taken money. Maybe you've covered up something. Maybe you're part of something bigger than yourself. And now, if you stop, everything collapses. Your career, your reputation, your freedom. So you keep going deeper, further, riskier, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. That's the trap. And eventually it does. It always does. Because corruption leaves a trail, emails, transactions, decisions, and all it takes is one audit, one whistleblower, one mistake. Then suddenly, the same person who once said it's not a big deal is facing headlines, investigations, charges, and the world asked, how could they do this? But that's the wrong question. The real question is, how did it start? Corruption doesn't start with evil, it starts with permission. Permission to bend the rules, permission to justify the choice, permission to believe it's different this time. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because it doesn't feel like corruption when it begins. It feels reasonable. This isn't just about scandals you see in the news. It's about something much closer, because the same process, the same justifications, the same small compromises exist everywhere, in business, in government, in everyday life. Corruption isn't a distinct problem, it's a human one, and that means it can start anywhere. So the next time you hear about a massive scandal, don't just ask what they did, ask how it started. Because the truth is, corruption doesn't begin with a crime, it begins with a choice, a small one, the kind that's easy to ignore, easy to justify, easy to repeat until it isn't. If you want to understand how corruption really works, not just the headlines, but the roots behind them. Subscribe to Corrupt Roots because the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes.